our goal if the Arabs are in this country. There is no other way than to transfer the Arabs from here to neighbouring countries, all of them. Not one village, not one tribe should be left. As we shall see, transfer was Zionism's euphemism for ethnic cleansing. It was Arthur James Balfour, the foreign minister in Britain's wartime coalition government, and before that Prime Minister, who gave Zionism's colonial enterprise a degree of spurious legitimacy. He did it in a note addressed to Baron Lionel Rothschild on the 2nd of November 1917. The Balfour Declaration, as it became known, was in part a response to the personal pleading and lobbying of Dr. Chaim Weizmann, who had become the leader of the World Zionist Organization after Herzl's premature death. The document said, "His Majesty's government views with favour the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people and will use their best endeavours to facilitate the achievement of this objective, it being clearly understood that nothing shall be done which may prejudice the civil and religious rights of non-existing Jewish communities in Palestine, or the rights and political status enjoyed by Jews in any other country." Palestine at the time was controlled by Turkey, and Britain had no right of any kind to give Palestine away in whole or in part to anybody. In 1957, an article in the American Bar Association Journal by Sol Linowitz, who was to become an advisor to and a negotiator for President Carter, concluded that the Balfour Declaration was legally impotent. The Balfour Declaration concealed from public view a reality which, if it had been acknowledged, would have invited the conclusion that catastrophe was bound to be the outcome if Zionism was allowed to have its way. The concealed reality was the makeup of the population of Palestine. At the moment the Balfour Declaration was issued, the Arabs numbered about 670,000 and constituted 93% of the population. Jews then in Palestine numbered about 60,000 and constituted 7% of the population. The term Arab or Arabs did not appear in the Balfour Declaration. As we have seen, it reduced the 93% Arab majority to existing non-Jewish communities. In the House of Commons in July 1937, Winston Churchill, then excluded from office and campaigning for the Hitler threat to be taken seriously, gave an explanation of why the Balfour Declaration was issued. He said, "It is a delusion to suppose that this was a mere act of crusading enthusiasm or quixotic philanthropy. On the contrary, it was a measure taken in due need of the war, with the object of promoting the general victory of the Allies, for which we expected and received valued and important assistance." The clear implication of those words is that in November 1917, Britain had needed the Zionists and their influence and had been prepared to pay the price they asked for it.
Jewish extremists attacked British troops, wrecked government buildings, blew up trains and ships. And so Palestine remains a place of martial law, where all go their ways only under watch, where the innocent must suffer with the guilty.
There is not time in this programme to go into the documented detail of what assistance Britain needed from Zionism and where it was needed, but the following can be said in summary. In November 1917, Britain was facing the prospect of defeat in World War I. the Admiralty had warned that Britain might have to surrender. To stave off any prospect of defeat, Britain needed Zionism's influence in revolutionary Russia and America. The Zionists were expected to use their influence to keep Russia, Britain's ally, in the war, and also to prevent a complete communist takeover of Russia. And the Zionists were expected to use their influence to bring America into the war, and to see to it that, against the clock, the money was made available to fund the upgrading and expansion of America's war machine. And there were two other factors at work. British policymakers believed that the establishment of a Zionist state in the Arab heartland would assist Britain's control of the region by, among other things, keeping the Arabs divided about how to deal with it. It was also the case that Britain's leaders, the anti-Semitic Balfour in particular, did not want any more Jews in Britain. From 1881, because of poverty and persecution, including pogroms, Jews had been streaming out of their Tsarist Russian homeland in search of a better life in America and Western Europe. Senior figures in Britain's conservative establishment feared, as did Britain's long-settled Jews, that an influx of more Jews might provoke anti-Semitism. When, with the help of the Arabs it was intending to betray, Britain defeated Turkey and occupied Palestine, it was in a position to give substance to the Balfour Declaration. But what substance? Balfour spelled it out in a memorandum he prepared on the 11th of August 1919 for the Paris Peace Conference. It said, "In Palestine we do not propose to go through even the form of consulting the wishes of the present inhabitants of the country. The four great powers are committed to Zionism, and Zionism, be it right or wrong, good or bad, is rooted in age-long traditions, in present needs, in future hopes of far profounder import than the desires and prejudices of the 700,000 Arabs who now inhabit that ancient land." 20 years later, and shortly after the British occupation forces had put down a full-scale Arab rebellion and destroyed the Palestinian leadership, Balfour's policy was repudiated by a committee whose members included Chancellor Vincent Caldecott. The committee investigated Britain's promises to the Arabs, and the Lord Chancellor was privately appalled by the British duplicity the committee uncovered. Its unanimous report was issued on the 11th of March 1939. It said, "His Majesty's government was not free to dispose of Palestine without regard for the wishes and interests of the inhabitants of Palestine." 6 weeks later, in the countdown to World War II, and terrified by the prospects of the Arabs throwing in their lot with Nazi Germany on the basis that the enemy of their enemy was their friend, the British government unveiled a white paper setting out its new policy for Palestine. It said, "His Majesty's government therefore now declare unequivocally that it is not part of their policy that Palestine should become a Jewish state." In a most explicit way that left no scope for misunderstanding by anybody and no opportunity for misrepresentation by Zionism, the White Paper spelled out what Britain's Palestine policy was to be from here on.